Well, I'll start with good morning, good evening, and for some, good afternoon as well. Okay, so as shared by Imran earlier in the promo, I'll be talking about DevSecOps challenges and opportunities. Uh, the challenges primarily are faced by me in my DevSecOps journey so far while working in last three organizations, and I'll be sharing how I actually converted these challenges along with my team into the opportunities. So, what I'll do is first I'll talk about challenges and then we'll pause for a few questions and then we'll talk about opportunities. And at the end, we'll have the question answer session again. Okay, then let's go ahead. Little bit about me. I love traveling. I've taught in the university for some time. Uh, I have dabbled in kernel module development, device driver development, porting, etc. Work for a static analysis compiler. Uh, I have mentioned it in one of my slides. I won't name it. Did my pen testing stint in web, mobile, and infrastructure and IoT world. Worked for some fabulous clients in different domains like banking, insurance, telecom, manufacturing, and retail across many countries. Yeah. Okay. To start with, the usual challenges, right? People, process, tools. And if you look at the diagram there, people is the biggest block there, right? And it has variety too, if you observe. So that's because of the perception and ego that people carry, and how do we have to, manage those while achieving our main objective, that is secure system development. We'll see all that. Okay, so starting with people, getting quality DevSecOps consultants has been a bigger challenge. So we all know that the whole information security domain or cybersecurity domain has scarcity of good consultants. In that, DevSecOps is a very niche field, and thus getting quality people within that niche domain is very critical. Apart from that, the people challenge is primarily focused towards the pragmatic leadership. If you are lucky, you would get a leadership that is supportive of security initiatives, understand why we are doing what we are doing in security domain. So if
Mohan,
they are
sorry
not,
to
then it is our
can
duty basically to convey that message appropriately in the language that they understand, which is
Mohan, can you hear me?
primarily business and business risks, and not technical language like cross-site scripting, SQL injection. I don't think they appreciate that. So, in my experience, I have actually seen that challenge, and once I change the way communicate with them, then things started rolling in my favor or in security favor, I would say. Second challenge is about the process. So we have seen process evolving, right, from waterfall to agile to DevOps and DevSecOps now. So the point is, as long as the culture and the processes within that culture are open to accommodate new ways of working, we are good. Otherwise, it would remain as a challenge. Accommodating, so processes which are accommodating, that means they try a new thing. If they fail, they understand, they learn the lessons, and then they start adopting a newer way of working, you know so that's what I call by accommodating processes. I have seen different cultures, and among those, so far, the most accommodating culture which I found was from European countries, actually, where these companies look forward to new change. If they fail by any chance, they don't do the blame game. They basically understand what the lessons to be learned there in that failure, and then they learn those and move on. And that's something we all have to adopt. And final challenge is primarily focused towards tools. So I'll be talking about each of the challenges later. So tools primarily, the challenge in this area comes from choosing the right set of tools. We'll see in detail how and what exactly you need to consider while choosing those. And then when you choose those tools, what all you need to keep in mind. Of course, first and foremost is organization that you are working in, the technological landscape that you have, the ecosystem that you are working in that organization. All these things you need to keep in mind, while deciding what are your requirements, for the DevSecOps tools. So the
Mohan,
challenges,
sorry to interrupt you.
I have few slides which cover that part, and then we'll take a
Mohan,
break and wait for questions. Okay,
Mohan, can you hear
so I'll
me?
start with people first. It's very important, in the DevSecOps domain to invest uh, time, energy, and resources to find some good people or smart people, I would say. Especially to work in the DevSecOps domain, because if you have less number but very smart uh, DevSecOps consultants in your team, you actually can do a lot of things. I remember in my previous organization, we had around 1,200 plus developers, and we were four people when, at least for the initial 2 years, in fact, and then we had two more later. So the point is, we struggled, but that struggle was really, a happy struggle, I would say. We were learning, we were failing, but still learning. So the point is, if you have smart people around, you can actually do all the R&D there, and still ensure that your DevSecOps program basically doesn't suffer. It learns its lessons and continues to grow. So having good, smart people around, all those in small in number, still you can make wonders out of it. Well, when you choose a DevSecOps team, it has to
Mohan,
be a cohesive team.
sorry to interrupt you.
And if you adopt automation, we'll talk about how to do that. You can achieve a lot of things. So when I say cohesive team, you should have different flavors, in your team, basically. People with good application security background, people with good programming and scripting background, people who can actually do the API integration with different tools, because most of the tools these days expose APIs, and to automate we need integration, with those tools, those vendor tools and open source tools with the in-house tools and processes. So yeah, if you have that flavor in your team, the automation journey becomes very smooth. You also need people with some program management background. So, in our case, in the last two organizations, we actually learned it, as part of the job. So, none of us had program management background, although we had some exposure, but not as a full-fledged program management. But yeah, we learned on the go. Stakeholder management. This is very important aspect. Some of us had that exposure, so we did well in that area. So, who are your stakeholders in DevSecOps world? Your business folks who actually sponsor your projects, give money to buy the vendor tools, get the buy-in from the board of directors to continue the program in the way you want. The business folks who want their functionalities to be implemented and pushed to production. The developers who you have to interact with day in day out to ensure that they understand what you want to say, and they behave in a manner in which they start delivering secure systems in the production. So the point is, your team should have at least 3 to 4 out of these 5 points, and the other points you can always you know pick up on the go. So that's an important aspect. That's what is my personal experience. uh, s- the savvy leadership is again, as I said, is very key to the success of the DevSecOps program, because if you don't have the blessing from the top management, you struggle. Basically, you struggle in terms of getting budgets for your program. You struggle basically in rolling out different initiatives within the DevSecOps program, etc. For example, here in the case of Prudential, we have different local business units across Asia, US, and Europe. In Asia, we had to go to different business units and give them the demo of what we have done in terms of tools, processes, etc. So all that requires funding, and so we conducted almost four full 3 days, sometimes 4 days workshops at those business units. uh, and unless you have a good backing from the senior management, these things do not materialize. So ensure that they understand what you want to achieve. You give them the benefits, the value that you would add by doing taking those initiatives. And once they appreciate that, then it becomes a smooth journey for you, for the organization, for the development teams. Yes, the language, as I said in the beginning, we need to understand first what they want to hear, and when they when you understand that, then you basically articulate your requirements, your expectations in that language. As I said, since they understand business and business risk, you basically have to translate your whatever that you want to convey in that language. And then I have seen things change. Sometimes they change slowly, sometimes they change immediately. It depends on how savvy the leadership is at the top. Okay, ice cream solves everything, I wish. So the next challenge is about tools. I'll talk about process later. So tools, choice of tools is very crucial. Sometimes wrong tools can actually work for certain part of your organization very well, but they fail miserably in other parts. Imagine, you are an enterprise, a medium to large enterprise, and then you have legacy system. You have a very complex technology landscape. You know, in that case, if you take a tool that works only, for example, for Java, JavaScript frameworks, you may have issues or challenges when it comes to supporting legacy issues. With C and C++, the systems developed in, say, Java or .NET, etc. So you should be choosing your tools very carefully, ensuring that you, in your POC or proof of concept time or evaluation time, you have evaluation with all the variety or representative variety of your technology landscape, and then you finalize your tool selection. Yes, indeed. In fact, the tools can actually make or break your program, because once you choose a tool, you should have full faith in those. And unless you have done your homework good, your choice becomes a tricky issue. Okay, and if you happen to choose a wrong tool, the development teams actually then start doubting your decisions in every other aspect, not just the tool. So spend some time, do some good analysis, and then take your call in terms of technology or tool selection. So you normally, who should take that call? So my suggestion is, if you have center of expertise or center of excellence teams in your organization, they are well suited for trying out these, because they are neutral. They are not biased towards a technology or the other. So they can make an independent decision based on the landscape that you have in your organization, as well as teams with curiosity. So I've seen, there's in some organizations there's nothing called COE, but they have these, cool teams, spread across the organization. So if you can leverage their curiosity and engage them in this tool evaluation process, you may get really good results, mind you. So that's about the choice of tools. Now, uh, I get a lot of questions from folks. Hey, we have the industry standard reports, coming from these two big stalwarts, and should we go ahead with that or not? So my suggestion is, hey, those reports are really good because they have put in a lot of effort there. They have done their analysis. Uh, I would say you take the direction from such industry standard reports, which they publish every quarter, every year. But at the same time, you do your own research. You understand what is your local requirement, what is your organization's requirement, and then only you take that direction from those standard reports, do analyze, and at the end, do a proof of concept or do your own evaluation, or at least if you have faith in some experts in the field, you go by their word. But again, you should have full conviction in them, basically. But I would always prefer to do my own evaluation because uh, in industry sometimes there are new tools, new technologies coming from very small vendors, completely unknown, sometimes even the startups. But yeah, they can actually create a really good breakthrough, than the traditional proven vendors. So always do your analysis, I would say. But yes, to get a sense of direction, hey, who are the leading fields, leading vendors in the field, you can rely on industry standard reports there. Okay, so these are the challenges which I faced, when we were supposed to choose those tools for the organizations where I worked. Of course, in terms of requirements, budget and timeline is like universal, right? So if you have budget constraint, you can make a choice. Hey, some tools I will buy, some I will go for open source tools. But if you are able to convince your management the value that you get, you can have uh, the choice of tools the way you want it, which suits your requirement. Timeline, yes, that's an important question. So yeah, you need to take into confidence your senior management if they are trying to push you to quickly select and let's move on. Well, you need to really buy some time there. Unless you have enough time, you may end up choosing wrong tools actually. So don't go by the pressure coming from the vendors, especially to push their products, as well as SMT, conveying, hey, by end of this month, you need to, uh, identify the list of tools that we are going to roll out. Tell them it's a good idea to immediately roll out, but at the same time, it is important to finalize these tools, to ensure that it fits and it does justice to the requirements of the organization. So get enough timeline. Again, what is enough actually? That depends. So in my personal experience, again, don't take it as a standard, but I have taken minimum 2.5 to 3 months to maximum around 5 to 6 months, to evaluate all the 4 or 5 different tools in DevSecOps. So for some, you may, if you have more people, you can actually just guide these people in different tracks, and then you may be able to finish everything in 2 months as well. So because we had people constraint, bandwidth constraint, it took some time for us, but we were happy that we were able to do justice with the whole evaluation of all the variety of features. We did comparison. We also conveyed to the product owners, or sorry, the vendors, basically, saying, hey, this is where you stand, this is how we did the evaluation, and this is our choice. In some cases, it's a very straightforward decision. In some other cases, it's a very tough competition among the different tools. So sometimes you have to you know you can't buy two or three tools simultaneously, right, within a particular track. So you have to make a choice based on certain parameter and choose one among the whatever the best slot. So yeah. Next, one of the important criteria that I always prefer is ease of installation. So when you say ease of installation, I'm not talking about installing it once, right? Because you have different environments. You have dev, you have UAT, you have production, as well as you have HA. So high availability environment basically. So ease of installation is an important criteria there, because you have multiple installations. Sometimes you have to move from one version to another, so that also should be very smooth. So consider those aspects as well. Ease of use for both the stakeholders. See, in DevSecOps world, primary stakeholders are the AppSec consultants and the development teams. So ensure that the tools that you choose have good options for both these stakeholders. For AppSec consultants to configure, to fine tune, for whatever the different features that the tool has to offer. For development teams to get scan, get the feedback, and get the kind of recommendations, etc. Apart from ease of use, nice UI, appealing UI, etc. So that's very important. Scanning time, that's very essential. We normally I did not pay much attention to this earlier in my career, but later on I realized, it's important that the tool delivers its value even given certain period of time, while the stakeholders interact with it. So when it comes to scanning, I mean, for example, if it is SAST, static analysis tools, may it be whatever, Fortify and Coverity or check marks or the likes. Static analysis itself is a challenging field. If your lines of code is high, you need to expect a good amount of scanning time then. So even though you may increase your CPU or RAM, you still face some challenge with regard to completing it within 30 minutes, So keep that in mind as one of the requirements criteria. Quality of scanning feedback. Now this is important because a tool can scan and identify vulnerabilities, but what next? So all developers are not security curious, right? So sometimes they are new to some of the vulnerabilities. In that case, you have to keep such people in also in mind while choosing a tool basically. So that the tools actually not only list the vulnerabilities, also give how to mitigate it, how to resolve it, or any other general recommendation that it tool can give to fix the issue, as well as learn some lessons out of it. So you understand how a particular tool in a given track, like static analysis, dynamic analysis, container security, or software composition analysis, or in all these areas, how the tool is offering the list of vulnerabilities, the criticalities, and then the recommendations. So that thing plays a really big role, I would say. Of course, intuitive user interface, it's a must, right? So especially with the young development teams, you need to keep that in mind very, very thoroughly. Ease of metrics management. Now, since we all know that once a program is delivered, that is deployed, and it moves to BAU, business as usual, obviously metrics are very important, because they convey whatever the message that needs to be conveyed to the senior management on what is happening on the ground. So ease of metrics, generation of metrics, retrieval of those metrics, as well as publishing those metrics in a meaningful way through your tool is again very essential. So keep that in mind as well. Support for APIs. Yeah, that's a must actually. I mean, if you get a vendor who says, "Hey, unfortunately, we have we don't have APIs, or we have, say, only SOAP support. We don't have only these REST APIs as support. I think you need to reevaluate, in such cases. So whatever that you can achieve from your user interface, you should be able to achieve and more through APIs. Okay, so that's the primary criteria, I would say, while choosing security tools. Because imagine you're not working on one or two tools, right? Just think from the development team's perspective. So developers, when they work in their day-to-day life, they have a lot of tools already they're using, struggling with. But now on top of that, if you say, hey, look at this tool, this is for static analysis, look at that tool for dynamic, this is for container security, this is for software composition analysis, and so on. Now if you give variety of these tools, they don't have time to go to each tool's dashboard and understand the details, right? So instead, you should be able to create your own dashboard by talking to the APIs of those particular tools dashboards, and then bring up a single view dashboard, or a single glass of pane, where they can get the whole integrated view of the security vulnerabilities in one shot. So APIs play a very important role. So ensure that that is one of the important criteria while selecting. Integration with secret management tools. This I added recently in the slide. I have been recommending this to many teams across my career. Uh, DevSecOps, we talk about these 4, 5 different tracks, right? Static analysis and so on. But in every track, if you see, we need to take care of these secrets. So either for your build, right, in the pipelines, or in your applications lifecycle. So ensure that these tools help us integrate with whatever organization's choice for secrets management. It can be CyberArk, it can be HashiCorp Vault, or it can be AKV, or any other key vault in the cloud service providers domain. So that's an important criteria, and that's a must actually. Unless you have all the variety of options that the tool gives, don't go for that tool otherwise. Ease of integration with org process. Now that's important because some organizations have a culture with a very stringent processes, especially in banking and finance industries. In such cases, your tool, because you are introducing this DevSecOps tools now in the existing process. So these you should be able to take the tool and integrate within the org process in a seamless manner. Then only you can ensure that the stakeholders adopt to the tool actually. Vendors' readiness to accommodate custom requests. Now, I have seen now most of the vendors, are receptive in this manner because there is good competition. I have seen some exceptional vendors as well in this space, in the DevSecOps tool space, where they go that extra mile to understand what at least the large customers have to say, or some very unique request which actually enhances their product in terms of value delivery. So in such cases, these vendors take the feedback, go to their product managers, and then they say, hey, prioritize this because this is important in the long run, for the development teams across the spectrum. So yeah, choose those vendors who are receptive to your custom requests. Product roadmap. So when you interact with the vendors, it's very important to understand how the roadmap is looking like. I'm not talking about 1 or 2 quarters. I'm talking about 2 years from now. I'm not saying 5 years, but at least 2 years. They should have some very strategic roadmap in place, so that what to expect down the line once you choose the product. Because if they don't have roadmap well enough described, you would have challenges eventually. So the tool may look good, but eventually you would struggle with the roadmap that they have. Integration with org CI/CD ecosystem. Now, most of the tools I have seen, they are, they have these integrations readily available out of the box. At least 1 or 2 years back, it was not the case. They were supporting either Jenkins or Bamboo or maybe some other. So these days you have Circle, you have Bamboo, you have support for Jenkins. Like these are out of the box, very given. So yeah, but ensure that it is the case with your vendors when you're evaluating. Out of the box compliance and other reports. Now, not all organizations need this, but most of the organizations, if they have their regulatory requirements around, some or the other kind of compliance like PCI or HIPAA or whatever. So when you have these compliance requirements, you need to come up with some reports every now and then, to be shared with external auditors. So yeah, so these reports, once they are readily available out of the box from the tool, it helps you a lot. Instead of you struggling with custom reports, these would actually help in a big way. So that's about the tools, and the third and last challenge is about the process. Now, we have come a very long distance, I would say, starting from C and C++ era to the JavaScript frameworks we have with React Native and so on. Uh, and so is the journey in terms of development methodologies. So we started with one or two development small development teams with one or two developers, and then growing eventually very big, huge, with huge teams adopting waterfall development model. And then slowly people realize the issues with the waterfall model. The success was not repetitive, so eventually they moved to smaller requirements, quickly delivering the results in the production through agile, and then the CI/CD and so on. So you first have to understand where you belong to, in this whole spectrum, and if it is waterfall, or if it is agile, or if it is like a mix, agile, waterfall as well as agile, because I've seen some large organizations where some of the core products still continue in the waterfall because that's how that works for them, and some of the new projects continue to get developed in agile way. So within the same organization you may have to fit in both the development styles. Explore how effectively developers can get the feedback. So now once you understand, hey, it's waterfall, or hey, it's agile, or hey, it's hybrid, so you need to first understand, okay, how you can actually add value to them, to all those variety of development teams. And once you identify those areas where you can fit in those tools, once you've chosen those tools, then it's basically identifying, hey, what environments I should be targeting these tools, so whether it is dev or it is just UAT, and probably in prod as well. Okay, so you take the call based on the organization culture, the flexibility that you have, and then you can move ahead. How developers can start using it as soon as possible. Now this is very important, because I have seen uh, you need to once you say that, hey, this is the DevSecOps program that we are rolling out, and these are the different tracks we have, these are the tools that we have selected. So how smoothly the whole thing gets integrated in the development lifecycle is more important, and how soon, so the time is a very essential aspect in this whole process, because sometimes if you announce, and it takes really long time for the development teams to roll out and onboard, uh, y- your developers are not going to like it, so the moment you're ready, you announce it and ensure that you have done enough homework on onboarding, on on the different life cycle of DevSecOps tools. Okay, and then only you basically go to the development teams and start onboarding. Not until then. Otherwise, if you struggle in the onboarding process, the tool adoption by the stakeholders, especially the development teams, becomes a big challenge. And it should be seamless, like you. And if you have understood the process in your organization very correctly, you would very visibly understand that, hey, what should work in, for these development teams, where I should be able to integrate my tools, whether at ID level or whether at a pipeline level, or in the test environment, in the UAT or SIT, or even in the production. And always remember this motto that I always keep recommending everyone wherever I go. You need to start giving the feedback early. That means to the leftmost area, instead of at the rightmost, where only pen testing happens most of the times. Next, it should be effortless. I normally used to call it as frictionless, but friction being a little negative word, I changed it to effortless. So you should be able to give them feedback without anybody's assistance. That means they should be able to roll out something, without even bothering about the the security teams, or the tooling team, for example. So you should be able to make that whole integration very smooth, effortless completely. So once you do that, they will start using it more and more, and the more they use in iterations, the maturity of the development teams actually increases, in a very big way. And it's very gratifying result, when you see, once you roll out and give 1 year, and then you can see in the eyes of the development teams how fulfilled they feel, while delivering these secure systems. And the feedback should be constant. It shouldn't be like, hey, my tools worked for 2 months, and then there was some issue in the environment where it was hosted for 3 weeks. We couldn't resolve that issue, and then then we restarted again. So this shouldn't happen. You should have enough availability of your tools, so that the feedback is consistent and constant, for the development teams, because uh, you never know who's releasing what product at what point in time. So you have to ensure that your tools are always available, be it the peak hours or even the evening hours. You never know how they have developed their build pipelines. So ensure that you give them feedback early, in an effortless manner, and constantly. Yeah, so this is an example slide where I talked about continuous integration and continuous deployment. So these are possible areas where I have seen the security tooling actually helps in giving right kind of feedback. So I have put a few tools here, just because there was no space, I couldn't accommodate more. Don't blame me. Again, this is just a representative slide. If you like some other tool not mentioned here, just go ahead, use it. Ensure that you have done your evaluation homework. So you have SAST and OSS tools at the ID level. So you can use any of these tools. I won't name, but yeah. So you have plugins these days available for most of the widely used IDEs, like Eclipse, Visual Studio Code, then IntelliJ, and so on. Then in the build stage, where your pipelines come, you can actually integrate all the variety there. The static application security testing, or open source software security, or the container security. Even to certain extent, I have worked in an organization where Burp Suite and Zap was integrated in the lower environment. So all these, the green circles are primarily focused towards static analysis of the code or the libraries, and the ones in the red are the dynamic analysis, where something needs to be, in a running state. That means your application is hosted in some stable environment, and it is running in a stable condition. Then only you can go ahead and do that dynamic analysis. So yeah, so if you see here, your penetration testing, which is basically a manual task. These days, the expectations of the management is even to automate that. Hopefully, down the line, 1, 2, 3 years, we may have AI plus machine learning leveraged, to automate the fuzzing and the penetration testing part. And hopefully, we would get some at least 70-80% automated pen testing tools. So this slide, the message from this slide is you have a variety of tools work in different areas in the software development lifecycle. Uh, 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 right from your production monitoring on the rightmost side to the IDE plugins, you have a variety of ways in which you can integrate your tools and give the opportunity for the development teams to get the feedback early and smoothly, of course. So you enable them with the variety of options, and they would choose based on their liking, which tool to be used in which area. Some may prefer running build, running pipeline checks with every commit, but some would prefer IDE plugins rather than wasting time later in the pipelines. But it all depends on the culture of the organization and how the SRE teams, how the development teams prefer their way of working. As application security folks, we need to just give them multiple options so that they are enabled. So how to leverage those is left to them. So yeah, so that's the key message from here. Again, so this is an example slide. Don't go by the tools I've listed here. You just do your own analysis and ensure you select the right set of tools.
Opportunities slash best practices that we have seen. So all these are different challenges that we faced and in the DevSecOps journey, and eventually we learned lesson and it became best practice for us. And I'm just trying to share it here so that if you see some value, you can use it as well. Okay. So smooth onboarding. That's very important, for any DevSecOps tool that you want to roll it out. Especially to the young development teams who are very agile and can need to see the actions immediately. So if you give a session or a demo saying that, hey, this is a new tool that we are trying out, we have selected, and now we have deployed. So from that point onwards, till their application gets onboarded on that tool and they start seeing, the value out of that. If there is enough time gap, if there is a long time gap between that, between those two events, when you show them the tool and they start using it, they would lose interest. More the time, lesser is the interest they would show, and that becomes a bigger challenge, in the adoption, tool adoption, in the organizational culture. So if you want to make sure, the developers actually start using your tool, ensure that you go out to them advertising that, hey, this tool is there, start using it. You have to ensure in the background you have done enough work there, and what is that enough work? Basically ensuring that you probably have an online form where you accept their request to onboard, and then there is because onboarding does not mean just creating an account for that application in a given tool, right? It means much more than that. It means basically once you give them the ID on a particular DevSecOps tool for that application, they should also be enabled with the scanning instructions, how to integrate those tools in the pipelines at the ID level in the dynamic environment. So you should have an ecosystem first, done very well. Put it in the in a place where these how-to articles, these documents are published, and accessible to anyone in the development teams. And then you have the smooth onboarding where, click of 3-4 buttons and clicking few details about your application, they should be able to onboard and start using, either at ID level or at integration build pipeline level or at dynamic analysis level. So that's very important, the smooth onboarding, because that's the time when you can actually impress them and ensure that they are hooked to these tools. The more quickly they get hooked, lesser time you need to spend on explaining the value of your tools. So when you choose a software, or any in general DevSecOps tool, they always give value, but you realize that only when your end user is using it, right? So you should have as less time as possible between those two, showing off the tool and end user using it at the end of the cycle in their environment. So the shorter the cycle, better is the adoption. Next, automate what you can. Now this is a very, very, very important area. Why automate? Because for every 100 developers, I think we have one DevSecOps engineer or analyst present in the organization. In our case, for example, here we have, I think, 200 to 1. So that's how it is, unfortunately. I mean, we have to accept this fact that, we don't get the budget to increase our team size to whatever that we need, so we have to make good of whatever that we have. And to do that, automation is the only way out, Now, where all you can do your automation? Number one, as I said, onboarding. The onboarding should be smooth. So you should have an online form where you accept those application details and immediately call the APIs in all the respective tools, and do the onboarding within minutes, and not within days actually. So minutes, is the key here. Second, scanning. Now, when you scan, see, ID level, obviously, the development teams need to, integrate the plugins in their respective IDEs. But when I talk about automation in scanning, I mean the build level or pipeline level scanning integration. So the best way is, to come up with centralized library, and that should do everything for the development teams. And what they should be doing is only calling this function, to scan, or say 45 scan, or say task scan, or say OSS scan, or say container security scan. Just one function, and you provide their build IDs or whatever application IDs, and then just go ahead and scan it for them. So it should be that simplified. Once you automate in that area, your user experience, the developer experience becomes very smooth, and that really helps. Next area is the triage. Now we all know that when any tool, when it does the scanning, may it static, dynamic, container security, or software composition analysis, false positives are obvious byproduct, right? And false positives, the extent of false positive would vary. It is more in the static analysis tools and less in probably software composition and container security tools. So we have a wide spectrum within which our industry tools actually lie. Now, it's very important that we understand how to manage these false positives, because we cannot expect all the findings coming out of tool to be fixed, because some of those findings are actually not findings. And more the false positives, lesser is the developer confidence in that tool, right? I mean, we all have seen that, right? So the moment you say that, hey, fix it, and then they say, hey, are you sure this is the issue first, So triage is an important area where we need to do some kind of automation, whatever possible. I'm not saying everything is possible to automate, but whatever possible. I have a slide later. I'll talk about this later in that next slide. Next area is the build breaker. Now, it depends on the organization's culture, how you basically manage different activities in your software development lifecycle. How you develop, how you do the QA, how you deploy it, right? Some teams have dedicated, some companies have dedicated teams to do these activities. So you have different development teams, different QA teams, different DevOps teams, which manage the tools. And then there are release teams or deployment teams. The names can be varying, but if you have dedicated teams like these, eventually, as you automate, you want less and less human intervention in the whole process, right? So build breakers, when I say, automation in that area means, say, for example, you run the SAST scan, the static analysis scan, and the result is just out in the pipeline. Okay, the static scan step has been completed. Now the result is ready. It is pushed to its dashboard, central dashboard somewhere in the cloud or whatever. And now what do you do? Here you basically have the opportunity to add an automated step where it checks, hey, what are the number of issues that it has found in the scan? Okay, what are the categories of those issues? And does my build breaker criteria, allow this build to go to production, or it is going to fail it? Okay, so for example, my build breaker criteria can be, hey, no criticals allowed in production. Okay, if that is my build breaker criteria, after the scan is complete, I just have to do only one check, list out all the count of the critical vulnerabilities. If the count is more than 0, I'm going to break the build. Okay, and this script is very simple to build. So you just basically analyze the result that is coming out of the tool, get the count, measure the count, and make a decision. Whether to allow the build to go ahead to put the build artifact into some repo, Nexus or Artifactory or whatever that you are using, or break the build there, saying that, and give the appropriate reason, saying why the build is being broken, So there is a possibility to, or do automation in the build breaker area too. And then issue management. Now, this is a very critical area, I would say, because we just saw, right? We had issue with this tool itself, through which we are able to conduct this webinar. So any tool, basically, at the end of the day, is a technical tool, and excuse me. And tools have wear and tear. Tools have some configuration issues here and there. So they have some timing issues. They have thread issues. We have all seen the variety, right? So when you are managing DevSecOps tools, like in 4 or 5 different tracks, you end up having some issues every now and then, regarding whatever. It could be, hey, the database is full, 80% full. Now what do? You need to create some space, do some alternate arrangement. Hey, the servers are not working. Hey, the scanners are not working, right? So, these are technical issues, but there are other issues as well, like, hey, my tool is showing more false positives, right? That's an issue that developer has to face it. So the point is, you can create issue management system, which basically is an automated system where you have a form, you give them, hey, who are you, which application team you belong to, what is the category of issue, and then you describe that issue in more detail and what you have done to analyze it, first of all, right? You don't raise the issue just because you see some error. Why don't you do some analysis so that there's only one DevSecOps consultant for every 100 or 200 developers, so there's less bandwidth there. So to accommodate that, you do some homework at your side and then give us the issue. Okay. So once you have this system in an automated way, you can actually smooth out a lot of things. In my previous organization, in fact, we had this system where for first 6 months we had loads and loads of issues, actually, because everything was new. We were trying out different things, trying to stabilize the processes, tools, increase the policies, etc. And so a lot of issues were there. And eventually, the graph was trending downwards, So we were able to stabilize it, although we were just 4 people in the team. So automation actually helped us, to large extent. So we did automation in onboarding, in the scanning, in the triage, in the build breaker, in the issue management as well. Yeah, let me spend some time. 2 slides. We have triage on build breaker, and then we will move to the next challenge or next opportunity. So we have 2 types of stakeholders here in the triage process. We have development teams, we have AppSec teams. So development teams actually scan, they analyze the issues, and then they find true issues, and then they have to fix it. Then among 10 issues, for example, say 4 issues are true issues, there are 6 issues they think those are false positives. What do? You give them automated way to raise the request, saying that, hey, this is the tool, this is the application team, and this is the URL for the report for this tool, and these are the false positives we think. Once you raise a ticket, the AppSec team can actually analyze those triage issues, and if required, they can conduct meetings with the development teams. Okay, and if the outcome is, hey, no, all those issues are true issues, then you have to fix it. Hey, maybe those were false positives in real world. So then you need to just either ignore it, or sometimes those are not applicable to you. So just forget about it. No fixing required. Now, the question is why some of the issues are not applicable, right, for development teams. So we have seen the challenge in the open source, software scanning or software composition analysis, especially. So you have this one library, open source library or third-party library, and there is a CV reported on that, right? And you have 2 teams who are impacted by that. And now both the teams say that, hey, why don't you look at it? Are you sure this is a true issue? Then you look at it, you analyze, you do some search around and identify what is the CV about. And then you realize, hey, within that library, if this API gets called, then only you are vulnerable, otherwise not. In that case, you have to tell the team which is using that API, saying, hey, yes, it's a true issue, you need to fix this way, and you guide them. And there's this another team which is using the same library but not calling this API. Okay, for them, for the same issue, for the same CV, that issue is not applicable for them, or it is having no impact for that application. Okay, I have seen it a few times in the software composition analysis. So you have to do some triage work there, and come up with a solution. Either it's a true issue or false issue. So it may happen that for the same issue, there are 2 different teams. One has to fix it, another has to just go ignore it. Okay, so that's a possibility. So triage is in certain cases, certain special cases are very, very crucial. Next, build breaker. The process is very simple here. You basically, I'm just taking an example of some tools, that I know of. You can think of any other representative tool here. It can be GitLab, GitHub, or Bitbucket. So you basically pull the source code, do some pre-process, and then build it. And after building, you do the security scan or code quality scan through SonarQube or whatever other tools that you have. And then the result basically gets collated, analyzed, and then build breaker step is applied on that result. And then there are only 2 possibilities. One, no go, because probably the build breaker criteria has failed. And I have just listed here the example criteria. No critical security issues in production build. So that is my build breaker criteria. Okay, so if I find any such issue, obviously it's a no-go, and you have to start, fix, and rescan, right? And then if everything is fine, it will go, the build artifact will be pushed to the repo, and from there it will be picked up for production deployment. So that's how you can design your build breakers. And build breakers, as I said, it's a very simple step. You analyze the result. You have a build breaker pre-decided criteria, how you're going to break the build, and just apply that criteria. Just count that severity category. And then if the category is more than the threshold value, just break the build. Otherwise, you allow that build to go. So that's a very simple way of automation in the build breaker area. Improving tool adoption. Now, this has been a challenge. This is not just DevSecOps challenge, but this is a challenge for all the technologies when you introduce first time. So, especially for DevSecOps, I can speak here. So, my suggestion, a strong suggestion, is with every tool we get an opportunity, to talk to the development teams. So my suggestion is give as many live demos as possible. Share the basically to share the new tools that you selected and using, and it's already deployed and ready to use, as well as new processes. So, for example, build breaker is a very big process. Okay. Not everyone is accustomed with this idea of breaking the build automatically. Some may, but mostly no. In such cases, you have to give demos and say that, hey, so far we were having QA teams doing this analysis. Now it's automated and the tools do the most of the work, and this small script basically decides, whether the build is going to be broken or not, right? So more the demos, more more people would accept your tool or process. Next, allow developers to get used to those tools and processes. This is very important. See, breaking the build is so very easy, right? Just write small script and start breaking the build. But is it fair enough for the developers actually? You are deployed the tool, and then after 2 weeks you have started breaking the build for them. Just because the criteria is no criticals allowed in production build. That's not fair. So you understand from their perspective. So you give them some time to understand your tool, the UI, the issues that it is reporting, and the mitigation that it expects. And every mitigation has its own challenge. We all know that, right? As development teams, imagine just a small library upgrade, version upgrade from 1.1 to 1.2. It's not that straightforward. You just change in the XML file, in the config XML file, and it gets changed automatically. No, there are a lot of dependencies. So you have to validate. You have to do the regression test in the lower environment. Once everything is fine, you move, right? So the same is the case with fixing security issues as well. Now, that's the reason when you introduce a tool, give them some time, to understand the new tool, the way of working, the process around that tool. Okay. So once you give them sufficient time, and then you say that, okay, maybe 3 months down the line, we will enable the build breakers. And meanwhile, you understand, how the tool works, how to fix the issues. And we are there, as application security team members, we are there to help you guide how to fix those issues. So it's very critical to give them enough time to understand the ecosystem around your tools. Then give enough time while enabling the build breakers. As I said, 3 to 4 months is a good idea, because you never know when the application was built, right? So if it is recently built, they may have and they have more funding, and they have more development. More developers in their team. So the more issues, they can fix it. But imagine, they are budget constrained. They have a lot of issues listed by the tool, but there are very few people who have, bandwidth to fix the issues. And always remember this one very underlying truth, that developers are there not to fix the security issues, unfortunately. Developers are there to create new business features, enhance business features, okay? Not, to develop the system securely, okay? Although it is a must, but still, if you look at from the practical side, if you look at from the pragmatic approach, it's unfair from the business perspective, because they are pumping in money to create new business features to deliver it to their customers. Security, unless it is smooth, transparent, they feel it is going to slow down the whole process of business value delivery, right? So the point here is give enough notice, enough time before you start breaking their build. and tell them what is the build breaker criteria very, very clearly. You can give demonstrations on how the build is going to be broken as many times as I said. And the last part in this adoption process is create ecosystem. That's very important. As I said, we are one for every 200 or 100 developers. When such is the ratio, we cannot be there available every time when development teams need you or need your guidance, right? So what I have seen that works is you create frequently asked questions or FAQs or create documentation on how to use the tool, how to interpret the result create small, maybe 4 to 5 minute videos about how to use tools, how to fix the issues, commonly occurred issues, and then create videos. So these people can basically, just go through it and understand. So normally we have seen videos work when a new member gets added to the development teams. Especially if the developer is fresh, for example, or is coming from different domain altogether. In such cases, if you just point the new developer to the resources like FAQs, documentation, demos, and videos, the learning curve for the other team members, and the bandwidth basically gets drastically reduced. So yeah, so those are some of the things I have experienced myself that it works, and that's how I put here. So rollout strategy, break the build in stages. I just talked about it, so let me not touch upon that again. So what it means is, give some time. Start with super critical issues like SQL code injection, process scripting. So these are critical, most critical ones, easy to exploit. So break your build based on this, whatever. I'm just giving an example of these two categories. In your organization, there may be something else which is super critical. So identify it, and then make that as a build breaker criteria. And then maybe down the line, maybe after 2-3 months, you can say, hey, now that you have fixed that super critical, let's focus on critical. And allow them 3 to 4 months time to fix all the critical issues. And then down the line, you say, hey, now that you've fixed all critical, let's focus on high issues. Okay. And then, that way, in a staged manner, you can increase the scope of your DevSecOps build breaker criteria. And then, take your developer along with that, journey. So by giving them enough time, enough feedback, and enough help in, mitigation. Handholding in false positive analysis. I primarily mean here the triage and the guidance. We talked about this already. So you need to automate the process. You need to tell them why these issues are false positive. These are true issues that you need to fix. Sometimes the developers are new. Sometimes there are new vulnerabilities. We all know that. Every now and then, new CVs are brought out by the researchers, by the hackers, and when that happens, obviously we need to learn first of all, as AppSec consultants, and then we need to pass on that new knowledge with the development teams, and then guide them on how to fix those. So handholding is always required because they are not experts. Sometimes issues are new to us, so we also need some time to understand and then transfer that knowledge. Dispensation management, logging and validity. Now, I'll touch upon that a little later as well. But briefly, dispensation is basically, allowing them, to accept the risk and continue with the development and deployment. Okay, so it's important that we log these issues because whenever we are allowing them to accept the risk, it is not like a permanent risk acceptance. Always these risks are accepted on a limited time basis, right? 3 months, 1 month, 6 months, like that. So how do you keep track of? Because you have, say, 50 teams, 100 teams, or 200 teams to manage. So you always create some mechanism to log these activities and revisit once the timeline gets over, and just question them or just follow up or guide them, in terms of fixing. And once they fix, you need to ensure that you validate as well, those risk acceptances. Managing critical issues, very important aspect. Now critical issues basically, can be defined in different ways for the different tracks, right? For static analysis, it could be a SQL injection. For software composition analysis, it could be a vulnerable library which does not require any knowledge of your domain, knowledge of your internal implementation, or any other thing. Just the URL is sometimes good enough, like in the case of Equifax, right? So these issues are very crucial, basically, and it's important that we are prepared as AppSec consultants. We are prepared to deal with these issues, and this is my self-experience that developers normally do not realize OSS or software composition analysis issues, the critical issues from these scans, because they don't see the gravity that we normally see. So it happened in my previous organization again, where we saw these three. There was one critical issue and three application teams were impacted. The moment it was alerted by the team, we three from the team just ran in three different directions, just to ensure that we talk to them as soon as possible. And immediately we spoke to them. We told them the gravity of the issue. We showed them how it can be exploited. And immediately, the business stakeholders, they immediately accepted this as a bigger risk, and they gave bandwidth of the development teams to fix those. So it's very important that once we identify, we work with the development teams to remediate it, at least these super critical or level 10 issues. And if they need some time, then we need to follow up after that or during that time. And then we have to ensure that it is properly closed, working with SOC, this was again, this is what happened once. So SOC identified this issue, in one of the team's application, and they could not reach out to the right stakeholders for the almost one full day, 25 hours, I think. So it's very important, once SOC has identified issue through their intelligence or whatever feed that they are, tuned to, it's very important that the message goes as soon as possible to the right stakeholders, business folks to accept that the gravity, the technical folks to implement the fix for it, So what we did to fix that was, we allowed them access to our DevSecOps dashboard so that they get a feed of, hey, this application, who is the stakeholder, who is the business stakeholder, who is the technical stakeholder, who are the developers. So immediately, if you give a ring or an email, they were able to reach out within a few minutes of their acknowledgement. So it's always a good idea to have a good relationship with the SOC or track team, so that they can immediately act upon the intelligence that they have received, so that you can limit the damage. So what we did was, in our dashboards, we mapped for every application that we had onboarded, who are the right stakeholders, so that SOC teams can see that and start working on it immediately. Production monitoring. I've talked about this. So what is production monitoring? So imagine, you have done your deployment as a development team, and now you're working on something else, adding or enhancing some features. So while your application is in production, you haven't touched it, but still it can become vulnerable. We all know that, right? Because almost 50 to 60% of your build has come from outside. That means through your open source libraries or third-party libraries or some components that you have not developed, right? But you have trust in them that they were good when you chose to use those, right? Now, once you started using it, put in production, it can develop vulnerability. Some researchers sitting in some part of the world has identified this vulnerability, and now all of a sudden your application, which was running smoothly in production, safe, secure, and suddenly has become vulnerable, right? So it's important that we get that feed immediately, right? SOC teams are there, but their scope is little different. From the AppSec perspective, our scope is basically monitor these, these developments for the source code, for the the libraries that we have put in production, the containers that we have put in production, the tools for software composition analysis, container security tools. They have these capabilities to monitor in production. So we have to leverage that and ensure that we use those regularly. And these tools have alert mechanism, so you can alert in many different ways, through email, through SMS, or through whatever page duty, for example, like that. So whatever option that your organization is using, just connect with the tools for alerting the right stakeholders. Okay, effective production monitoring saved a huge effort. Again, that's an experience that I keep having these days because hackers are never idle, Tailored configuration. Now, this is with regard to fine-tuning the tools. Okay, it so happened that once a development team identified, they scanned, they found the issue, okay, they need to fix it, but instead of bringing it to the triage, the developer was new in that team. So what he did was there was an option for dispensation, and he just clicked on that button, and it moved out of their dashboard, and we couldn't see it because it was already dispensation was given to it. We could identify this limitation of the system only because we were logging everything what was happening. And while we analyzed, we identified, hey, some developer has automatically given dispensation on his own without going through the triage process. Now that's bad, right? Imagine if he doesn't understand the gravity of that vulnerability. Imagine it is not fixed and it is already in production. So that's very dangerous, and that's where sometimes you need to identify such limitations in the tools that you use, and work with the vendors to come up with a solution for it. So what we did was we then created a completely different new role, custom role called developer, and then we gave only basic features there: scan, view, result. That's it, and that allowed us actually to have better control in the triage process. So that dispensation was always reviewed with the right stakeholders, and then only the dispensation was given to them.
Quick reminder for 3 minutes.
Okay, fine. Okay, I'm coming to closure now. Almost. Do the right thing. Yeah, educate your developers to use local scans. Use tool dashboards, to upload library and analyze. These options are there now. Use tools, browser plugins to scan. ID plugins to enable local scans. We talked about this. Pragmatic hygiene. Now, we all know that the vendors keep upgrading their tools with better versions, better features. So you need to always keep trying those new versions, new features in the lower environment, and then only you roll it out. And this is the final slide. Imran would be happy, I think. Yeah, so managing 0 days. So keep eyes and ears open to sense or get a feed of what, where, which component is having this 0 day. And the 0 day may come in your libraries or the tools as well, which are hosted internally. So ensure that you understand the implication and act upon those. So when you act, you consider the respective stakeholders. The stakeholder could be, for a 0 day, a stakeholder could be a WAF team, web application firewall team. So they should be able to roll out a quick custom rules to prevent any exploitation of the 0 day. You need to continuously be in touch with the vendors so that they would know through their intelligence in the market, if there are any 0 days. So if that is a situation, we need to know it first rather than later. right stakeholders, you need to ensure that they are ever ready to act along with you. That means you prepare your development teams, business teams, this ready with this knowledge that hey, 0 days can happen, and that can happen to any team. So they have to have this that planning in the back of mind and dedicated bandwidth in case a 0 days developed in their ecosystem. To take care of it through any way that is possible. Okay, so this is the second last slide. This is the last slide, by the way. Secrets management. I talked about this in the beginning in the tools criteria. Ensure that you never store any secrets in plain text, and it can happen at multiple layers. It can happen at source code. It can happen in pipelines. It can happen in database configurations, or even at application layer. So ensure that these secrets are never stored in plain text. Use appropriate tools to take care of it. I remember seeing a question around PAM.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so you have CyberArk, you have HashiCorp Vault, you have AKV, and all other cloud service providers have the key vault options, to store and manage not only the static secrets but also the dynamic secrets as well. So ensure that along with DevSecOps tools, have a tool dedicated to take care of your secrets, all the requirements around secrets management. Yeah, and finally,
thanks a lot, Mohan, once again for spending a lot of time with us on a weekday after work and then sharing all of your insights with us. Really, really appreciate your time and sharing your insights.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity, by the way, Imran.
Yeah. And if you would like to get in touch with Mohan, his credentials are here. And as I mentioned before, we will share both the videos and slides on our YouTube channel. If you haven't already subscribed to it, please do subscribe it, because once we upload it, you will get notified regarding that. Now, so with that, we will say goodbye. But as I mentioned, we still hang around. There are a couple of more questions here. I would be happy to answer them